previous slide, Mr. Chair, if you will be comparing our current budget, this year's budget, to the NEP of 2026, generally there is an increase of 6.67 billion. But looking at the components, the capital outlay suffered big decrease. That is our reason of coming here, Mr. Chair. The decrease accounts to 45%. That limits the capacity of SUC to do innovation, research, and other development for our students and faculty. The next slide shows the regional comparison by 2025 GAA and the NEP 2026. It can be noted that 96 SUCs registered a consolidated increase of 13.56 billion, with growth ranging from 0.18% to 74.55% for others. This includes the UP system, which registered an increase of 3.12% or 3.12 billion, or counting to 13.76% when comparing the GAA 2025 with the NEP 2026. On the other hand, 26 SUCs, including MSU system, recorded a combined net decrease of 6.89 billion, with reduction ranging from 0.5% to as high as 76.36%. These decreases are largely attributed to cuts in capital outlays, particularly those associated with one-time projects and non-recurring items. When we compare the NEP of 2025 and the NEP of 2026 in the next slide, as shown here, the fiscal year 2026 NEP amounts to 128.825 billion, which is 15.075 billion or 13.25% higher than the fiscal year 2025 NEP of 113.749 billion, covering 113 SUCs with 113 SUCs all in all. Of this 113, 97 posted a combined net increase of nearly 17 billion, while 19 SUCs registered decrease totaling 1.57 billion. Overall, this shows that NEP to NEP, the increase is broad-based across SUCs, with few experiencing notable reduction. When we compare the NEP versus the proposed budget of state universities and colleges, PASOK is deeply appreciative of the continued support of the Senate and Congress, whose additional appropriations through the years reflect a transformative and resilient approach to higher education. Nevertheless, SUC's appropriations remain heavily concentrated on current operating expenditures, such as personnel services and MOOE, with very limited allocation for capital outlays. Moreover, SUC's budget under NEP and GAA are consistently far below the levels as proposed by state universities and colleges to the government through our respective regional development councils. As a result, total appropriations remain inadequate to meet the demands of a truly globally competitive higher education system that significantly contributes to national development as expected. As shown in this table, Mr. Chair, fiscal year 2026 NEP amounts to 128.83 billion, which to our comparison in the earlier slides, there was an increase of 6.67 billion from the current year's budget. Now, this is 163.82 billion or 55.98 billion lower than what was proposed by our SUCs. Our SUCs proposed 292.65 billion for 113 of us. Of the proposed 131.11 billion for capital outlays, only 9.56 billion was funded, leaving a variance of 92.71%. Operating funds keep running, capital outlays keep them moving forward. Looking at this table, our SUCs, as we have explained, proposed 292.65 billion. but what was reflected in our NEP was simply 128.83 billion. There was a decrease of 55.98%, Mr. Chair. Though our NEP now increased as compared to the last year's NEP, that is far below what we have requested. We have requested 292 billion pesos. As also presented in the earlier table, the most of SUC's budget, though seen as increased compared last year, it was heavily concentrating only on personal services, which is mandatory, and also concentrating on MOOE, the daily operation of SUCs. Only 7% is for capital outlay, Mr. Chair. So of the three expense class or components, what was heavily decreased was our capital outlay. That is our very reason of appealing and coming here, Mr. Chair. In the next slide, on our SUC's performance on the utilization of the budget given to our SUCs. Based on the BESF table on obligations and allotment, the utilization rate last year, 2024, was 93%. With continuing appropriations being spent, the actual rate is higher as the 12.6 billion in MOOE and capital outlays under the 2024 GAA remains available until December 31, 2025. For the current year's GAA, the budget utilization so far stands at 54% for obligation and 75% for disbursement. That is as of July 31 of this year. This figure shows that SUCs are diligent and able to maximize their operation despite limited funding. So we are happy to share that our SUCs have in general registered 93% budget utilization rate. Siguro, Mr. Chair, kaya mabilis mag-spend ng mga SUCs kasi kukunti yung binibigay. Just kidding, Mr. Chair, but we are feeling for increase this year. We are grateful for the continuing budgetary support for FHA since 2017. I would like to explain this very well. This table is appalling, Mr. Chair. Since 2022, we recognize Senator Bamakino.
Press Tirso. Before you continue, let me recognize the presence of Senator Bamakino.
Thank you po. Because napag-uusapan ng pre-hire education, we recognize Senator Bang. And would like to explain to you what's happening in our pre-hire education. Since 2022, when the pre-hire education budget was released directly to SUCs, many institutions experienced funding gaps. In fiscal year 2022, 89 out of 114 SUCs posted deficiencies amounting to 3.34 billion pesos. This deficit grew to 4.4 billion across 104 SUCs in 2023, 3.13 billion for 93 SUCs in 2024, and further shortfall of 2.42 billion is projected for 2025 across 82 SUCs. These deficiencies represent the difference between the FHA allocation in the GAA and the actual requirement based on enrollment. While 998 million was reimbursed from Unipass in 2022, the combined 6.8 billion deficiency for 2022 and 2023 supposedly covered under program appropriations remains unfunded, Mr. Chair. For 2024, SUCs cannot rely on internally generated income as these are already earmarked for ongoing and unplanned projects essential for their mandates. We are awaiting instruction from SED on how we can serve or secure the funds from HEDF as authorized by the 2024 GAA. For your information, Mr. Chair, last 2024, there was a special provision in the GAA that the funding deficiency for pre-hire education shall be taken out of the SUC's internally generated income, which is to our reading not very, it's unjust that the shortfall should be taken from our own budget. To be verbatimly as written in GAA 2024 special provision, in case the appropriation is depleted, referring to FHC or pre-education, the SUCs may charge the funding requirements against their internally generated funds, subject to accounting and auditing rules and regulations. To highlight, Mr. Chair, in 2024, we were told by GAA, a special provision, that the FHC deficiency can be taken from our budget and from the HEDF. If there's no fund in our AGI or internally generated income, then HEDF can be a source. But in 2025, to our surprise, that pre-higher education deficiency shall be taken out wholly or fully from our internally generated income. This special provision would not solve the deficiency in FHE of almost all SUCs in the country. The accumulated internally generated funds of SUCs, as reflected in the BSF, were already earmarked for their ongoing projects awaiting completion prior to payment and disbursement. It is also earmarked for planned projects of SUCs currently undergoing procurement processes and procedures. These projects are important in the pursuit of the respective mandates. So, meaning to say, there were lawmakers before pointing out that there are unused funds for SUCs, but those funds internally generated by us are already allocated for student development, faculty development, research and development. Meaning to say, if we source the deficiency from that funds, it is directly impacting our faculty and our students. So, we are shortchanging our students, Mr. Chair. Looking ahead, with the projected tertiary enrollment of 1.97 to 2 million students in 2026, in fiscal year, next year, and the FHC allocation of 26.1 billion under the NEP, we anticipated a 3.29 billion shortfall for 78 SUCs. I have summarized, Mr. Chair, the sum or the total of that deficiency. Since 2022 to 2025, we have a running deficiency of 12.3 billion peso. And to our surprise, by the time we speak, for 2028, 2026, there is already a shortfall based on the NEP and our projected enrollment of 3.29 billion. We therefore earnestly request an additional 3.3 billion for fiscal year 2026 to fully cover the growing deficiency and for the removal of the special provisions that compels SUCs to use their own internally generated funds, which cannot be redirected to cover funding shortages. We are in effectively sucking our own blood if the deficiency of pre-higher education will be taken from our own internally generated income.
Mr. So before you continue, let me recognize the presence of Senator Lauren Legarda.
Good morning, Chair, and our colleagues, and we just saw each other yesterday on a stormy day. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
Good morning po, Senator Lauren. So, with your support, SUCs will not only keep pace with the demand of leading our SUCs. So our request is direct to give us additional fund for the deficiency and to strike out that special provision, Mr. Chair. Next, on this slide, this is our request. While the previous slide is our request for us to be paid of the debts of the government, we don't have new request there. This is our new request. Our wish list. We have first and our second wish list. We recognize the limited fiscal space for fiscal year 2026, as is usually the message. It is our humble belief that in order to deliver quality higher education, the provision of equipment and the development of infrastructure must be given a priority. It is critically important for SUCs to continue building both human and physical capacities to meet the growing demands of higher education. It is our collective appeal and prayer that this committee may extend its kind consideration for additional funding for the priority programs